CEO's wife requested I be dismissed for disrespecting her. Then she saw My name is Sarah, and on April 3rd, I learned that 4 years of dedication meant absolutely nothing when measured against one woman's bruised ego. I was in my office at 7:30 a.m., reviewing quarterly reports for our West Coast clients when Victoria Sterling burst through my door like a tornado in Louboutin heels. Her perfectly contoured face was twisted with fury, her ice blue eyes blazing as she pointed one manicured finger directly at me. "You will be terminated today," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "Last night at the Metropolitan Children's Hospital Gala, you deliberately disrespected me. When I walked past your table, you remained seated like some kind of peasant. The absolute audacity." Her glossed lips curled into a sneer that made my stomach drop. "My husband will hear about this immediately, and you'll be packing your desk before noon." I felt something shatter inside my chest as I realized my entire career was about to crumble because I hadn't jumped up fast enough when the CEO's wife walked by. 4 years of building the European division from 3 clients to 52. 4 years of working late nights, missing dates, pouring my heart into Sterling Associates, all destroyed because Victoria Sterling's ego couldn't handle what she perceived as a slight. Before I continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone try to destroy your career over something completely ridiculous? Because what I'm about to share involves the most satisfying comeback I've ever witnessed, and you need to hear every detail. 20 minutes later, my boss Richard Sterling stood in my doorway, his face grim. "Pack your things, Sarah," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, but I can't have this kind of drama at home." I stared at him in disbelief. "You're firing me because I didn't stand up fast enough when your wife walked by. She says you deliberately ignored her. That you made her look foolish in front of important people. That's insane. I was eating dinner and didn't even realize she was there." He sighed heavily. "It doesn't matter. She's made up her mind, and arguing will only make things worse. I'll give you excellent references and a generous severance package." My entire world was collapsing. 4 years of perfect performance reviews, countless successful deals, relationships with clients who trusted me completely, all meaningless because Victoria Sterling's pride had been wounded. That's when inspiration struck. "Before I go," I said calmly, "there's something you should know about your wife's big presentation with the German investors next week." Let me take you back to how this all started. 10 months earlier, I'd been browsing Elite Tutoring Network, looking for extra income to pay off my MBA loans. My degree came with a specialty in German language and European business, thanks to 2 years I'd spent studying in Munich during college. I was fluent, but more importantly, I understood the cultural nuances that most American learners completely missed. That's when I found the posting. Someone needed intensive German lessons twice weekly at their residence. The pay was extraordinary, $400 per session. No name was listed, just an address in Beacon Hill and very specific requirements: complete discretion, professional appearance, and absolute confidentiality. I applied using my maiden name, Sarah Mitchell, instead of my married name that appeared on all my work documents. I styled my hair differently, wore glasses I didn't normally need, and dressed more conservatively than my usual office attire. When you're working with ultra-wealthy clients, they often prefer their staff to blend into the background. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Boston Harbor, and everything inside screamed old money. That's where I first met my student, though I had no idea who she really was. She introduced herself simply as Vicky, and her attitude told me everything I needed to know about how she viewed people like me. "You're here to teach me German," she announced without even a hello. "I need to be conversational within 6 months. Not just basic phrases, I need to conduct business meetings, negotiate contracts, and sound sophisticated. Can you do that, or should I find someone else?" I nodded politely. "Absolutely. What's your current level?" She waved her hand dismissively. "I know some words. Let's just start." Within 10 minutes, I realized Vicky knew almost nothing. She mispronounced basic greetings, mixed up verb conjugations completely, and became visibly frustrated when I corrected her. But she was determined, I'll give her that. Every session, she pushed herself harder, though she treated me like I was nothing more than a highly paid servant. "Bring me a latte next time," she'd command at the end of lessons. "And make sure you use the service entrance from now on. The doorman shouldn't see tutors coming through the main lobby." I needed the money, so I smiled and nodded. $800 a week was worth swallowing my pride. But I had no idea I was training my own executioner. As months passed, I learned more about Vicky's motivation. She was working on what she called the deal of a lifetime, a joint venture with German automotive investors worth $75 million. She'd convinced everyone in her social circle that she was fluent in German, that she'd studied it extensively in Switzerland, and that she was the perfect person to handle international negotiations. "My husband thinks I'm naturally gifted with languages," she bragged during one session. "Everyone at the country club is so impressed when I drop German phrases into conversation. They have no idea how business really works." The irony was painful. Vicky could barely string together a coherent sentence in German. Even after months of intensive lessons, every word had to be written phonetically for her to pronounce correctly. Her grammar was elementary at best, but she was living in a fantasy where she was this sophisticated international businesswoman. Meanwhile, at my day job, I was actually doing the work she pretended to do. I built our company's European division from nothing. I spoke with German clients daily, handled complex negotiations, and had personally closed deals worth millions. But Vicky, who I still didn't know was Victoria Sterling, was playing pretend with her husband's money. The breakthrough came 8 weeks before that terrible morning in my office. Vicky was practicing her presentation for the German investors, and it was a disaster. She couldn't remember basic business terms, kept confusing yes and no, and was essentially speaking gibberish with a confident tone. "This isn't working," I told her gently. "You need more practice with fundamental concepts before attempting complex negotiations." Her face turned bright red. "Are you saying I'm stupid?" "Not at all. German is incredibly difficult. Most people need years to reach business-level fluency. I don't have years," she exploded. "This presentation is everything to me. It's my chance to prove I belong in the business world, not just as some trophy wife. You have to make this work." That was the first time I saw real vulnerability in her. Beneath all the arrogance and entitlement was someone desperate to be taken seriously. I actually felt sorry for her. "We'll work extra sessions," I promised. "I'll create phonetic scripts for your entire presentation. You can memorize it word for word." Her relief was obvious. "You can't tell anyone about this." "If people knew I was getting help." "Of course not. Client confidentiality is sacred to me." Little did I know how sacred it would need to be. 2 weeks before the investor presentation, Vicky was finally hitting her stride. She could deliver the entire pitch smoothly, answer basic questions, and even handle small talk about weather and travel. She was nowhere near fluent, but she could fake it well enough for a formal business meeting. "I'm going to be magnificent," she declared after our final practice session. "Those investors won't know what hit them. This deal will change everything." I smiled and packed up my materials. "You've worked incredibly hard. I'm sure it will go well." That's when she made the comment that would haunt me later. "You know, I'm attending a charity gala this weekend. It's for the Metropolitan Children's Hospital, and all the important business people in the city will be there. I'll finally be able to show off my language skills to everyone." My heart sank. Zerling Associates was a major sponsor of that same gala. I'd be there representing our European division, sitting at our corporate table. There was a good chance I'd see Vicky, though she still had no idea who I really was. I considered cancelling, or at least warning her somehow, but I couldn't figure out how to do it without revealing my identity. Besides, what were the odds we'd actually interact? It was a huge event with hundreds of attendees. The gala was beautiful. Our company had purchased an entire table near the front, and I was seated with our senior management team and their spouses. I'd chosen an elegant navy dress, styled my hair in loose waves, and worn contact lenses instead of my usual glasses. I looked completely different from the conservative tutor Vicky knew. Halfway through dinner, I spotted her across the room. She was radiant in a stunning gold gown, holding court at what was obviously the most prestigious table in the venue. She was animated, gesturing expressively as she spoke to the people around her. Even from a distance, I could tell she was having the time of her life. Then I saw him, the man sitting beside her, nodding and smiling as she talked. My blood turned to ice as recognition hit me like a freight train. Vicky was Victoria Sterling, the wife of my CEO. The woman I'd been tutoring for 10 months was married to my boss. I spent the rest of the evening in a daze, barely touching my food, praying she wouldn't notice me. When dessert was served, I excused myself to use the restroom, hoping to avoid any chance encounters. But fate had other plans. As I was returning to my table, Victoria was walking directly toward me. She was heading to greet someone at a nearby table, and our paths would intersect in seconds. I quickly sat down and focused intensely on my dessert, hoping she'd pass by without paying attention. That's when everything went wrong. "Sarah," a voice called out. One of my colleagues was trying to get my attention from across the table. I looked up automatically, responding to my name, just as Victoria walked past. Our eyes met for exactly 3 seconds. I saw confusion flicker across her face, like she almost recognized me but couldn't quite place where from. Then the moment passed, and she continued walking. I thought I was safe. I thought those 3 seconds of near recognition wouldn't matter. I was so incredibly wrong. Standing in my boss's office, watching Victoria Sterling's fury, I finally understood what had happened. She'd spent the entire night trying to figure out where she knew me from. When she couldn't place my face, she'd convinced herself that I'd deliberately snubbed her by not standing when she passed my table. In her mind, some random employee had disrespected the CEO's wife at a charity gala, and that simply could not be tolerated. Before I go, I said calmly, after she'd stormed out and Richard Sterling told me to pack my things, there's something you should know about your wife's presentation with the German investors. I walked to my computer and opened my email account. With a few quick clicks, I sent him a message with video attachments from every single tutoring session I'd recorded for my own reference. Check your email, I said quietly. His face went pale as he opened the first video. There was Victoria, stumbling through basic German phrases, asking me to repeat everything phonetically, admitting she couldn't understand what she was saying. She's been lying to you, I continued. For 10 months, I've been her private tutor. She can't speak German beyond memorized scripts. Everything she's told you about her language abilities is completely false. I removed my glasses and let my hair down, transforming back into the person Victoria knew as her tutor. I'm Sarah Mitchell, I said, and effective immediately, your wife's German lessons are cancelled. The silence in that office was deafening. Richard sat frozen, staring at the computer screen where his wife was clearly struggling with pronunciation that any first-year language student would master easily. The video showed her asking me over and over to write everything in English letters because she couldn't read German script. This presentation is in 5 days, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I know, I helped her prepare every word of it. She's memorized it like a script, but she doesn't understand what she's saying. If anyone asks her an unscripted question in German, or if she needs to deviate from her prepared remarks even slightly, the whole thing will collapse. He looked up at me with something between horror and disbelief. Why didn't you tell me who you were during the lessons? Client confidentiality. She hired me through a tutoring service under strict privacy agreements. I had no idea she was your wife until last night at the gala. Even then, I planned to keep her secret because that's what professionals do. I gathered the last of my personal items from my desk. But since she's decided to destroy my career over an imaginary slight, I figure those confidentiality agreements are void. Wait, he stood up quickly. Don't leave yet. We need to discuss this. There's nothing to discuss. Your wife made her choice. I'm just making sure you understand what that choice actually costs. I walked toward the door, then paused. Those German investors aren't just bringing money to this deal. They're bringing their top executives, their translators, and the cultural liaisons. People who will immediately recognize whether your wife can actually communicate or if she's just reciting memorized phrases. The door closed behind me with a soft click. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next 5 days passed in a blur of job applications and furious phone calls from Victoria. Apparently, Richard had confronted her about the tutoring sessions, and she was livid that I'd betrayed her trust. You signed confidentiality agreements, she screamed during one particularly unpleasant voicemail. I'll sue you for everything you have. I called her back once, mainly out of curiosity. Actually, Victoria, you should read those agreements more carefully. They protect client privacy from outside parties, but they don't prevent tutors from defending themselves when clients attempt to damage their careers through false accusations. I never made false accusations. You told your husband I deliberately disrespected you at the gala, but you and I both know you didn't recognize me there. You're destroying my reputation based on a completely fictional narrative you created in your head. The line went quiet for a long moment. You're still fired. Yes, I am. And your presentation is tomorrow. Good luck. I hung up and tried to move on. But I couldn't stop thinking about those German investors. Some of them were people I'd worked with professionally over the past 4 years. Herr Müller from Frankfurt Manufacturing, who always started meetings with questions about American football. Frau Weber from Munich Logistics, who appreciated cultural references and traditional greetings. They were coming to this presentation expecting to meet someone who understood their language and their business customs. Instead, they were about to encounter Victoria Sterling with her memorized script and her complete ignorance of everything beyond basic pronunciation. The morning of the presentation, my phone rang at 9:47 a.m. It was Richard Sterling, and he sounded desperate. Sarah, I need your help. I don't work there anymore, remember? The investors arrived early. They wanted to have coffee before the presentation, and Victoria is panicking. She can't handle casual conversation in German. She's locked herself in the bathroom and won't come out. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That's unfortunate, but it's not my problem anymore. I'll give you your job back. Full reinstatement, a promotion, a raise, whatever you want. Just please help us get through this presentation. I considered it for exactly 5 seconds. No, Sarah, please. This deal is worth $75 million to the company. If it falls apart, we'll have to lay off half the European division. That hit me harder than I expected. The European division wasn't just my work, it was built with the help of amazing colleagues who didn't deserve to lose their jobs because of this mess. I'll make you a deal, I said finally. I'll come in as a consultant, one time only. I'll help with translation during the presentation, but I'm not doing it to save Victoria's reputation. I'm doing it to protect the people who still work there. When I arrived, the main conference room had been transformed with multimedia displays and elegant catering. Victoria was practicing her opening remarks, terror obvious in her eyes. What is she doing here? She hissed at Richard when she saw me. Helping to save your presentation, I replied calmly, unless you prefer to handle the QA session on your own. Her face went pale. We both knew she couldn't. The investors arrived precisely on time. Herr Müller greeted me in German, and I responded appropriately. Frau Weber asked about my background in German markets, and we had a pleasant conversation about trade relationships. I could see Victoria watching our exchange with growing anxiety. The presentation started well enough. Victoria delivered her memorized content with confidence, and the investors listened politely. Everything was going according to plan. Then Frau Weber raised her hand. Entschuldigung, she said in German. Could you clarify the timeline for the Boston distribution center? Victoria's face went blank. The question wasn't part of her script. I'm sorry, she said in English. Could you repeat that? Frau Weber repeated the question, speaking more slowly. Victoria looked at me desperately. I remained silent. Within 20 minutes, I had essentially taken over the presentation, answering detailed questions while Victoria stood to the side, completely sidelined at her own deal. Finally, Herr Müller addressed the elephant in the room. I'm confused about the structure of this partnership. We were told Mrs. Sterling would be our primary liaison, but it seems clear that Miss. He looked at me questioningly. Patterson, I supplied. Miss Patterson has the expertise we need. Could you clarify who would actually be managing this relationship? The room fell silent. Victoria was staring at the floor, her face bright red with humiliation. I think there may have been some miscommunication, I said gently. Perhaps it would be best to reschedule after the organizational structure can be clarified. After the investors left, the conference room felt like a tomb. $75 million, Richard said quietly. Gone. It was never really there, I replied. You can't build international partnerships on lies and pretense. Victoria finally looked up. This is all your fault. I turned to face her directly. No, Victoria, this is the consequence of your choices. You chose to lie about your qualifications. You chose to destroy my career over a perceived slight that existed only in your imagination. I walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I actually felt sorry for you during those tutoring sessions. You seemed so desperate to prove yourself. But respect isn't something you can fake or demand. It's something you earn through competence, integrity, and treating other people with basic human dignity. You're still fired, she said weakly. I laughed. Victoria, after today, I wouldn't work for this company again if you begged me. But I was wrong about that too. 3 weeks later, Richard Sterling called me with an interesting proposition. The board of directors had been less than pleased when they learned about the failed investor presentation and the circumstances surrounding my termination. Apparently, several board members had worked with me professionally over the years and were furious that I'd been fired over such trivial reasons. We'd like to offer you the position of Vice President of International Business Development, Richard said. It comes with a substantial salary increase, your own budget, and complete autonomy over the European division. What about Victoria? She's no longer involved in business operations. The board made that very clear. I considered the offer carefully. I'll take it, but with conditions. First, I want a written guarantee that family members of executives cannot interfere with personnel decisions. Second, I want the authority to rebuild the international division my way, without interference from anyone. Done.